happy to be a part of this gathering of young people, advocates, parents, community leaders, and others of us who are committed to building communities that work for families and youth. I really want to be specific about who's in the room and who's shown up today to be a part of this discussion, because I want to remind us of who we are to one another and what that means for us in our daily lives. I really believe that we are all connected. A little more than 2 decades ago, I was one of the young people we are here talking about today. My mother was a teenage mother. She had me. I was also a twin at 15. I lived in Los Angeles, California, but Los Angeles, Inglewood, Compton, and many of the other places I called home when I was a child might as well be Brooklyn, New York. It might as well be Bed-Stuy, Brownsville, or Red Hook. There are certain parts of Brooklyn that really feel like home to me. At the age of 17, I left home to live with my paternal grandmother, who I barely knew at the time, in Las Vegas, Nevada. I attended school during the day and worked 40 hours at night in a food court in a local casino. I knew I wanted to go to college, but had no clue how to get there. Up to that point, I couldn't have told you the difference between an Ivy League school or a state-level institution, let alone how to write a standout college essay. Back in my hometown, there was a teacher named Ms. Bowman who had a reputation for getting kids like me into college, and I was convinced that she could help me. On her advice, I applied to and was accepted to Howard University in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Well, you know, it's not over yet. When I shared the good news with my family, a relative was quick to point out what I couldn't see at the time. He said, "You're not going anywhere." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you don't have any money." And in that moment, I was crushed. He was right. I had no way to pay for it. The letter that moments earlier seemed like a golden ticket became a heavy weight in my hand. For the next month or so, I used the payphone across the street from my high school to contact my teacher back at home in California for help. This is before cell phones. On most days, I left a message, and on others, I waited patiently on hold until the bell for the next class rang. Frustrated that time was running out, I boarded a Greyhound bus back to my old high school in California during the wee hours of the morning. Before the first bell rang, I was standing in the doorway of Miss Bowman's classroom begging for her help. She was stunned. I was supposed to be in a similar classroom 4 hours away. Seeing the urgency in my eyes, she asked me to step out of the classroom while she made a phone call. When I returned, she announced that I had received a full merit scholarship to Howard University. I made it home that evening just in time to make my shift at the food court. That summer, I boarded a plane with $200 in my pocket for Howard University, believing it would be enough for a lamp for my dorm room, textbooks, and food. It wasn't. It was my first time on an airplane and outside of my community in any significant way. I wanted to start out by sharing that story with you for 2 reasons. The first is that I believe that if it wasn't for Ms. Bowman and her love for little black boys and girls like me that really had no chance and no clear pathway out, I would not be standing here before you today. She was doing her part in her own way to ensure that we did not fall through the cracks. The other is that nearly 2 decades since I boarded that plane, and as I talk to you right now, not much has changed about the condition of many of the communities I called home: Compton, Inglewood, and San Bernardino, California. What is true is that the public schools in many of my neighborhoods are in far worse condition than before the passage of Brown versus the Board of Education, and more segregated than ever. The growth and privatization of U.S. prisons have robbed many communities, including mine, back home, of many vital human and economic resources. Double-digit unemployment continues to threaten the day-to-day survival of families and entire communities, have been ripped apart by neglect, decay, and predatory lending practices of large banks and lending institutions. We need to build and create more connected communities. Connected communities are those that provide the necessary preconditions for individuals, young people, and families to achieve full economic security from early childhood on. Connected communities have high levels of civic engagement, strong, vibrant community institutions, including hospitals and schools, access to necessary resources, and bridging opportunities, lower rates of violence, incarceration, arrest, and unemployment. They have good grocery stores, banks, and people and families aren't worried about where their next meal is going to come from. All those elements come together to create the necessary conditions under which people are able to pursue and reach their full potential without harm, stress, or worry, including young people. Across the country, communities and neighborhoods of concentrated poverty are more likely to be disconnected, meaning that the conditions of the communities are not set up to help people succeed. They're filled with landmines, obstacles, and hurdles, seeming to do the very opposite. And it's not about individuals, it's about structures and institutions and systems. When you're worried about securing the basics, housing, food, education, or staying safe, you don't have time and space to dream. You just don't have it. In a real sense, poverty itself, including the conditions that are created as a result of it, is the #1 barrier to escaping poverty. Recently, there's been a lot of conversation about the role of grit and resilience on life outcomes for young people. It's the idea that our success in life is much less shaped by how smart we are or our neighborhoods, but by learning self-control, resilience, and of course, grit. Some school districts have begun to implement programs such as yoga, meditation, and other programs to teach kids self-control. I love yoga, I do yoga, but I don't think it makes much sense to teach kids yoga or coping skills without fixing the issues in communities that cause them stress in the first place. It doesn't make sense to assume the problem is a lack of self-control and not the fact that there are few or no guidance counselors in schools and plenty of metal detectors and cops. There's a clear message that we are sending. We have to ask ourselves, why do we expect children from low-income communities to develop grit or resistance in order to succeed, and we don't expect it from any other children? And also, why do we allow the things to happen to low-income people and children and families that we would not tolerate for middle-class or well-off kids? In the time I have left with you, which is probably none at this point, I want to leave you with this. I believe the mark of a good childhood is freedom, the freedom from worry, stress, burdens, coupled with the freedom to explore, grow, and learn without consequence or incidents. These freedoms are often denied to brown, Latino, and poor children. We are not allowed to make mistakes without it cascading into something much larger. A fight at school can lead to expulsion or jail time, or an early pregnancy can cause a girl to drop out of school or cause people to label her as no good or going nowhere. We must provide the support and scaffolding to allow young people to make mistakes and know that these mistakes are part of the journey and not the end. I read an article this morning as I was preparing to speak to you today, and it was the young man that played, I don't know if you've seen Moonlight, but the character Kevin, who's from the Bronx. And he said, in the interview, he said, well, I wanted to get out of the Bronx and go to a place where people had dreams. I didn't have a lot of friends who were dreamers. My heart broke. I believe that we must begin to create space for young people to begin to dream and craft a future beyond what they can see in this particular moment. And I know this is true because that's what was given to me. Our communities must be filled with possibility, and young people, I truly believe, should not have to leave their communities to dream or to be free.